Hey friends, it's Lauren Taylor. Thanks for joining me in my craft room. I'm grateful to have you here for a Fandom Friday video. This week I'm featuring the stamp set called That's a Rock Fact from Popsiclesticks, along with lots of dies from her collection, like the Ad Admit 1 A7 layer dies, the border dies set, and I'm going to use a banner from the mini Slimline stitched layers. I'm also going to bring in a couple other dies, particularly this one from Spellbinders. It's called Wise Owl. It was a small die of the month, but it is available at the Spellbinders shop on its own. And then I'm going to bring in some Lawn Fawn dies as well, but let's move into coloring. So I've stamped the images that I want to use for my card on some alcohol marker friendly white paper and ink on 3 black ink, the Blackout ink. And it's kind of been my recent go-to for all my alcohol marker coloring. That and the Sassy Club Onyx Black ink pads are the two that I always have right next to me. And for this card, I'm going to be using my Olo alcohol markers. So as you can see, I have a little piece of mint tape on my glass board, and I put the tops of my markers on there. So in case you have Olo markers and would like to color with similar colors, you can take note of them here. If you have any questions about my coloring, just let me know in the comments. Most of my coloring, if not all, I'm trying to think real quick up ahead. I think I only use 2 shades for everything. Maybe 3 for the skin tone. I add in a little bit of a third color just on the nose because their noses in this particular cartoon fandom are a little pinkier, so I think that's the only area I do 3 shades. I will say though, for my little brother's like overalls and the frog, I do bring in a third color, but that's just because I think the hue is off a little than what I wanted. So I'll bring in a third color to kind of balance out to the hue of color that I was trying to go for. So while I'm coloring, I want to tell you a little bit about why I picked this card for a couple reasons. One, I was making this literally last night for Craft Roulette for last week. There's an episode of Craft Roulette on tonight, so I am filming this and making this the night before, but I did make the deadline for Craft Roulette, and the different parameters for this card, they were to create a book binding card. And honestly, I don't really like book binding cards. They're not my favorite. So I was trying to think about what to do, and I saw another creator put or create a card that had the spines of books on them, the binding of a book, and I was like, that is genius. So that's why I'm going to bring in that owl die set because there's a book in there, and I'm going to include that book on my card. The colors for Craft Roulette were candy, and let's be honest, candy can be a rainbow of colors, so I was really excited for that. But I'm also going to stamp candy and make them into a rainbow of colors as inspired by this adorable little TV show characters. The element was rhymes with og, so of course I have the little frog, because that rhymes with og, on this card. And then the random was letter, letters, or lettering, and I'm going to stamp a sentiment, so I will have letters on my project. So this was for last week's episode of Craft Roulette, episode number 254. I am also creating this card for the Fandom Friday Instagram hop that I do with some crafty friends over on Instagram. And it's once a month, kind of a stress-free hop along just for funsies with some other friends who love fandom products. And this month we are doing a love story. And I know you're like, what are you talking about love story with my 2 little brothers here? But I think family love is a really fun and important like plot to a lot of shows, and these 2 brothers are actually half brothers, and the older brother has a hard time with his younger little sibling here. So I really like how throughout this series the older brother really does start to value and love his little brother more than he did before when the series started. So I just thought that was a really cute kind of love story. And I also just am obsessed with this cartoon. Thanks to Popsiclesticks, Davina turned me onto it, and my daughter and I are obsessed now. So I will be probably trying to not let my daughter steal this card, but I'm sure it'll go missing eventually. But that's the theme for this month, and I just thought it was kind of fun and fitting for the hop. And then, of course, it's Fandom Friday on my channel, so this works out great. It aligns perfectly with the Fandom Friday hop that's once a month over on Instagram, too. I am going to also be very loosely following the February Show Us Your Sheet Load sketch. Um, it's an A2 size card with dimensions from Call Me Crafty Owl's channel, and I'll have her video linked below if you're interested in learning more about Show Us Your Sheet Load if you don't already know about it. But I kind of just use the layout as my inspiration more so than following the sketch exactly or using the dimensions because I am making an A7 size card. This particular one is going to be 6.5 by 5, which I know isn't exactly A7, but it is the perfect size for nesting your A2 dies, and that's why Popsiclesticks came out with this A7 die set because I can grab my A2 nested dies. I'm going to be using some Lawn Fawn ones today, and they layer evenly and perfectly. It's an amazing concept. I'm just in love with everything Popsiclesticks does. I immediately add to cart every time she has a release. But anyway, so that is what inspired today's card. There's a lot of coloring on this card. I thought I would be done chit-chatting by now, but I am only on to my little bluebird here, and coloring her in. I did have like pictures of these characters up on my computer while I was coloring. I was also watching the Four Nations face-off game, so I did have to edit out all the times I stopped coloring because I was watching the hockey game. But the coloring didn't take too terribly long. It's very helpful when you kind of already know what you want to color and the color palette that you need for each of the characters. So I like to put out or display the images on my computer, which is off to the side, and then I use those to pick out the colors. And I was actually coloring two at a time, so I can make two cards. So I have my one set where I did the coloring first to make sure I liked the combination, and then I came over on screen and colored in the one that you see here. So I just had a lot of fun coloring. I think I really love how I colored the tea kettle on top of my little brother's head. I think his little elephant costume is so cute, and I did a really good job coloring it. I was very proud of myself. But I'm going to finish off this coloring with my candy for little candy pants here. One of the episodes, I think it's the first episode. My little brother here is throwing candy out of his pants, so I'm going to sprinkle this candy around the card as kind of my last little bit of embellishment for the card. Now there is not a die set and I was too lazy to use my scan and cut, so I'll go ahead and fussy cut these images off camera. Again, I was watching the hockey game, so I came back much later. It took me a long time to cut these out because I kept getting distracted. And I also started some die cutting. So I have an older paper pad here. This is from a brand called Fancy Pants Designs, and it's a 6x8 Halloween paper pad because I love Halloween. So I use the A7 die from the Admit 1 A7 layer dies to cut that wood grain background. And then I used a set of Lawn Fawn dies. I used the largest fancy scalloped rectangle and then the second largest outside in stitched rectangle to create this frame. And I'm going to trim down a piece of this yellow pattern paper from the Harvest 6x8 pattern cardstock pad from scrapbook.com. And I'm going to cut it down to fit behind that frame. So that way I can just glue it to the back and I have this cute kind of like picture frame for my scene. I'm going to grab the Coordinating Harvest Smooth Cardstock paper pack and take that darker green color, and that's going to be my ground. I kind of wanted it to look like a woodsy background. I thought that paper kind of gave that feel. And then I'm going to trim this green cardstock to be 2 inches, and I'll use one of the border dies from the border die set from Popsiclesticks to create my ground for my characters to walk on. Now this is going to be larger than my like tree background page, and so I will trim that down once I get it adhered. And then I use the largest and widest of the banner dies from that mini Slimline stitched layer die set. And then I am going to make my card base. So what I do for this size is I grab an 8.5 by 11 and I trim it down to 10 inches. So I trim off 1 inch because I'm too, my paper cutter is at 6. So I trim off 1 inch off the long side, 2 inches off the short side, and then I turn it back to 10 inches and I score it at 5. So basically I am making it 6.5 by 10 and then scoring it at 5 inches on the 10-inch side. So I was getting ready to start assembling my card, and I remembered that I didn't die cut out my book pieces, so I'll go ahead and grab those pieces out and then run them through my die cutting machine with some brown cardstock for the book part, some white cardstock for the pages, and then I ran the book cover again through some gold metallic cardstock so I can add in the details that are die cut with some gold cardstock. So I'm adding some tape runner to the back of my wood grain, and I'm adding that right to my background. I'm going to add some tape runner to the back side of the top of the hill and the front side bottom of that panel that I trimmed. And that way I can glue the green onto that yellow panel pattern paper. And I'm going to just trim off the excess. Now with that, I'll be able to add some tape runner to the back of my frame, and I'll be able to attach this piece or this panel that I've created, this background, to the back side of the frame that I die cut. So I'll go ahead and use my grid mat to help me get that centered and straight as possible on the back of that frame. And then I added foam adhesive strips all along the back and peeled off the release paper to attach this to the front and center of my card base. So I have pretty much, I followed the sketch, like I said, very loosely this time, but it has the same kind of similar feel to the sheet load of card sketch for February of 2025. So I'm going to layer my book together now, just following the design as intended for the dies. It's one thing I do really love about Spellbinders dies is they're easy to follow and layer because they have debossed and etched details to make it really easy to line everything up. So there I have my book with the book binding, and I'm going to attach that to my card. I'm going to attach it to the frame and background with liquid adhesive just to the bottom left here. And then I realized I probably should put a little foam adhesive just to make sure that corner of the book is nice and secure. I decided to stamp my sentiment onto the banner that I die cut, so I'm stamping Into the Unknown on the right side. And I thought that that would be enough, but you'll see when I start layering everything together, it's going to feel a little off balanced. So I'm going to add a little more in just a minute. So I'm attaching my banner. In the sketch, the banner is more centered to the design, but I wanted it to be a little more up. And then it's actually made of vellum, but I decided to just do a die cut so I can stamp my sentiment on it pretty easily without having to do any embossing. I layered my little rock into my little brother's hand and then the frog on top of his kettle hat. And then I'm using foam adhesive to attach all of my characters down. So I started with my older brother on the left, the little brother and his pets in the center, and then the bluebird up and to the right. And here's where I'm going to stamp "Oh Well" very carefully. You'll see my happy hands. Yay! It's stamped just fine onto the left side, and it just made the card feel a little more balanced. I thought the book being on the right and the sentiment being on the left, it would look okay, but it just felt uneven. Then I added my candy around my card just like I would with sequins or other embellishments, and that finishes off my card. I really love how this card turned out. I know the book feels a little odd in the corner, but there is a book in one of the episodes that one of the like kind of side characters reads, and so that's what inspired the book that I put on this card. But thank you so much for joining me. I'll link my Instagram down below if you want to hop along with us. It's again just for fun and lots of really cute fandom creative ideas for you to check out. But I hope that you like my take on this, the prompt, and of course my sketch and craft roulette from last week. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!